Hello, welcome to our session today. We're going to be showing you the new features in the new version of Quirkos, which is out this week. This is Quirkos 2. It's our first major update after 4 years of Quirkos being publicly available. So we're going to show you the new things. We're kind of assuming today that you've used Quirkos before. We'll run a full session later in the month, in another couple of weeks, which will have all the nuts and bolts of the starting from scratch. So this is kind of the focus today on the new things. And boy, are there a lot of those. So very basically, the main thing that you'll see is the new interface. So we've taken a lot of help from UI designers. We've spent a lot of time watching how people use the software. And so we're able to make the interface a lot more intuitive, the layout a lot more similar to other software. So hopefully things will just kind of fall under the mouse a lot more than they used to. And also be much easier to get around things, especially the sources and the tabs and the properties than they were before. All these things are a lot more logical in the new layout. We've also added memos for the first time, something people have been adding for a long time, asking for a long time. So this means that you can now attach little notes, little comments to sections of text, keep those, show them anywhere in the software, and enables a lot more different kind of analytical styles, especially kind of IPA and in vivo coding. So this is a big deal for a lot of people. We've also got the groups features now, and we had levels before, so this has now become groups. The advantage of this is it's now a lot more visible, it's easier to work with. But it's a way that you can create non-hierarchical groups of quirks of the codes on your canvas, which you can turn off and on. So you can still do different levels of coding. So you can still have kind of very descriptive coding or higher level coding, something that's more abstract, more theoretical. And you can turn off and on some or all of those codes at will. So I'll show you that. We've also got the Quirk Search. So if you've got a lot of quirks on your canvas, you can now quickly search for the name and they'll pop up. It's a lot of fun. I don't know how I managed without that. The Quirk Properties view, this starts to show you breakdown by your source properties for each of the quirks. So it's a completely new way of kind of cutting the data and looking at the results. We've also added rich text support for the first time. So now you can have bold, italic, underline, etc. And this allows you to keep a lot more of the nuance and the emphasis from your transcripts if you've been using emphasis in that way in your transcripts, but also allows people who are working with different kinds of documents, especially historical documents, which use those rich text tags to do different things. That gives them a lot more capability in the new version of Quirkos. We've also got the reports can now be saved as editable Word files. Again, a lot of people have been requesting that. So you can now do basically anything you like with your report, customize it, change one word, edit bits of it, anything you like, because you can bring it into a standard Word document. So that's very cool too. And there's also the new Csv Exports. So basically now we've got much better exports for spreadsheets, for Excel and SPSS and R. And that allows you to look at your data in new ways, create pivot tables in Excel, and also do statistical analysis if you want to do that. But let's not talk about these things. Let's look at these things. So if we close this, we can see the new layout of Quirkos. So if you're familiar with Quirkos, this should look fairly similar. We've improved the color scheme a bit, so it's still easy on the eyes for your late night coding session. We've got all the different things here, though. So we've got the list of our recently used projects, the ability to remove certain things from the list, so we can get rid of things that we don't want to see there anymore. And we can also show you let's show the referendum project. Yeah, let's look at an example project. So the new version is backwardly and forwardly compatible with the old version, so you can bring in your work from elsewhere. Right, so the first thing you'll notice is that we have a much larger canvas area now. So by moving the action bar, the bar with all the buttons, to the top of the screen, This has given us a lot more space on most people's screens for the canvas. So there's a much wider area that you can work with. This kind of shows you the extent of it now. And you've also got more space for the text and for the memos column, which is important. I'll show you in a minute. You can obviously still zoom in and out of the canvas as you could before. You can move everything around. You've just got a little bit more space to work with. We've also rearranged some of the buttons up here. So we've streamlined what goes in the project button. So we've got the basic Sage things there. And there's an export button now, which now has the reports and all the different things you can generate, since we've added a lot of things since we originally created those buttons. Some of them didn't quite fit where they were before. So we've got undo and redo here. We've got views, and some views have been updated here. Here's the new groups button, which I'll be showing you in a second. The queries buttons here as it always was, and the help and the settings as well. But probably the most significant difference is here on the right side of the screen. So previously we had the tabs on the bottom of the screen. That confused people. We're used to our browsers where the tabs are along the top of the screen. So we moved everything up there. So everything's now at the top of the screen. So we can choose between the sources just as we did before. The source browser is still here if we want to look through all of the sources we had in the project and load tabs from there. But the important thing is that that now has this kind of subcategory here. So for Simon, which is the active one, or if we choose June as the active one, or James here, we've now got two tabs, one for the text and one for the properties. So it's much easier to switch backwards and forwards between the text, which is what we use most of the time, and the source properties. They work much better with the tabs. So it's just, people are not going to get lost anymore. And it's going to be a lot easier to understand what part of the source that you're seeing. So it's a little something to get used to, but I think it's worth it in the long run. I mean, most people I've shown to in the workshops have already been like, oh yeah, okay. So I really hope that that's a worthy change, because it's always horrible when people change where all the buttons and things are in software, just as you got used to them. But I'm pretty confident for most people, these are things which we've not added any new buttons. There are less buttons, in fact, than there were before. We've just made sure that things are a much more logical layout. So it should be quicker and fewer clicks for people to perform most of the actions. So the other thing that we changed here is the import. And you can see we just tried to simplify the language across the software as well. So if you don't have a technical background, we're trying to use less technical jargon in it as well. So now there's not a single import option. You can just use this view here, and you can bring in one or many sources as you like. So you just click one or click all with the arrow button here to select a whole bunch of them, and you can bring in a whole bunch at once. So that's got a lot simpler and a lot easier, and it just comes in one dialog without the clunky preview that was there before. So the other thing that you'll notice about the canvas view here is that we now show you the total number of codes in the whole group. So if you've got a parent and child relationship here, as we have other areas, and then subcategories for Glasgow and Edinburgh and rest of the UK. Before you couldn't tell how many quirks there were underneath it, and now in this little bracket you can. So we know that there are 18 codes, 18 quirks, sorry, 18 quotes coded directly to the other areas bubble here, and 134 in total. So that's for all of the quirks in this group. So that's really useful to see now, and that appears in the reports and also your canvas views. Again, you can always turn that off if you don't want to be quantifying your data too much. So we still revolve around that kind of philosophy, but it's easier to see what's going on in here. Okay, so let's look at the memos. So this is the major new thing, and it's accessed with this little button here. So this opens and closes the memo panel, and that's what shows our memos, kind of like a little bit like post-it notes. So all you have to do is, it works the same way as the codes, basically. So you just drag and drop text onto the memo column, even if it's closed. It will pop open, and you get a little space here, a little yellow label to attach a little bit of text. So you can see it's associated to this section of text here. It's highlighted in slightly different color blue. And you can just start typing straight into here. Person was well informed. Oops. Great. So I can click outside there to close it. And I can have another one here. Oops. And so anytime we don't want to see the memos, we can just close the column with the toggle button here. Those open and close like that. They can overlap as well. And you can click between them like this. You can copy and paste in here. Also, when you select one of the themes, the memos, it selects that section of text, so you can then code straight onto something else. So you can't code the memo itself really, but the way Quirkos works, you really wouldn't want to do that. You want to code the text that's associated with it, because anywhere where you see that text, you could now see the memos as well. So let's see if we can find that. There it is. Great. So now we can see this here. So yeah, selecting. So you can edit the text in here at any time, but selecting the memo also selects the text that's associated with it, so that you can code that section of text or something. And that's very useful if you're doing IPA, or if you're doing in vivo coding, or even certain types of grounded theory. The kind of coding where before you would kind of have an Excel column and you'd create another column for kind of like your summaries or your observations before you created codes as the kind of second step to the process. You've now got this kind of association in Quirkos. So you can select some text here. Okay, this is about something, drag and drop here. This might be theme. And then you can go back later and then you can add that theme onto the actual code that you want. So we drag and drop and put that somewhere else. So we try to make it very intuitive, very neat, very easy to work with. We're always looking for feedback. This is a big new thing. So let us know what you think. If there's some way that we can improve it, we'd love to hear that. So that's the memos basically. As I said, they'll appear everywhere that you see the search results in Quirkos. So they're pretty well integrated. They'll also come through in the CSV exports and the report, and I'll show you those when we get to those. Well, the other thing I want to show you today is the groups. So the groups has replaced what used to be the levels function. So it's accessed in the same way. So you can either now edit that by right-clicking on something and choosing edit. And so we've got some groups in here. These are called test levels because it comes from an old project. So we can edit and change the groups. So let's get rid of these test ones because those are kind of not very useful. And let's have one here for politics. Another one here for opinions. So with the groups, we can create, as I said, any kind of clustering, any kind of groups, non-hierarchical groups. So the SMP, so that's a quirk that I want to associate with politics. I don't want to associate it with opinions. But the key thing about the groups is that a quirk can belong to more than one group. So you can have overlapping groups and you can show those overlaps as well. So SMP belongs to politics. That's great. But then also does politicians. That's definitely about politics. And also individual politicians. So Alex Salmond, he's about politics. So now what we can do is if we click on the groups button, we get a list of all of the groups that we've created. So we've got a group for politics. And if we tick that, we just see the quotes that belong to that. So there's our Alex Salmond one. It's also showing us the hierarchy view for that. And we can see just those ones which are for that. So if you're doing multiple levels of coding, if you create a group for first level of coding, second level of coding, so descriptive coding, in vivo coding, or more advanced theoretical codes, you can choose to have some of your codes belong to those groups. You can move them in and out of those groups, and then you can just choose which ones to show. So it's now another way of kind of streamlining what you show on the screen. So another way of managing the canvas a lot better, but also creating kind of structure for you. Because of course you can look at those with the query view as well. So you can see results just from the groups. If I just want to see things that come from the politics group, I can do that. and it will show me results from things which are just from that area. So it's going to be a very powerful tool for a lot of people. Now, the other thing that we've done to make this a little more fun is to have Quirk Search. So again, in a situation like this where you've got quite a lot of different themes and bubbles, I mean, we've seen projects where people have got 500 or 600 quirks on their canvas. You can now search for the title. So if you're looking for politics or things that type with politics, just start typing, and as you type, things disappear. So there's everything that begins with P, PO, politics, politicians. There it is. Found that quote. And now I can code directly to it. So if I want to find everything which is about the referendum, great, that's where it is. Drag and drop onto there. So it's nice and fast, nice and snappy. And if you're like, oh God, where if I put that bubble? It makes it a lot more easier to find now. Now, another new thing that we have for the quirks is the Quirk Properties. So let's have a look at these because it's quite interesting. Previously, while we had the source properties, so you could look at the source properties across the whole document. So we can see, you know, so for all of our sources, 50% of them are men, 50% of them are female. Well, we can also use that in the query view, and we can see results just by the women, but we couldn't see that particularly by the coding. But now we can. So now there's a new way of looking through that. So if we choose any of the quirks, so let's choose the political parties here, and double click on it to open the hierarchy view. So this is where we see, well, let's see everything people said about the Green Party. We can click and see that for our coding. Now we've got a separate tab over here, so we can see the text associated to that, but we can also see the properties associated for that code. So who's talking about the Green Party? Well, the men are talking about the Green Party slightly more than the women. There's a 50-50 split in this, so that might be interesting. The people who voted yes are talking about the Green Party slightly more than those who voted no. So we can look at this in a new way, and we can compare that with something else. So we look at the S&P. Okay, so this is very obvious when you read the text, but men have talked a lot more about the S&P. It was a lot more important to men than the women in the project. And you can see that difference here in how many quotes have been associated to men about the S&P as compared to women. When talking about the Conservative Party, it's much more 50-50. So it's very interesting to be able to kind of cut it in this new way. Anytime we can go back to the text here and look at the actual text about that. So why are people talking a particular way about that? While we're in this view, I'll also show you the new Tick Box Dialog. This is, again, just a little UI improvement, but it's a lot more obvious to choose which quotes you want here, or you can choose them all or none of them to copy and paste into Word or something else. So again, the tick boxes are just a lot more intuitive than the little kind of one button that was there before. Okay, let's go back to the main screen with the home button as always. And let's talk about the rich text. So there's something that probably quite a lot of people won't notice. I'm just going to make the text a little bigger here. So I'm going to settings, project preferences. I can change the width of the memo column here, so I'll make that a little smaller. I'll just make the text a bit bigger so you can see it easier while I'm faffing around with that now. So basically, before Quirkos only supported plain text, so you couldn't have bold or italic. But now we've added that capability, so we can put in bold, we can put in bits of underlining, we can put in bits of italic here. So we can do a lot of faffing around and showing the different things. So you're able to edit that, so you can add emphasis if you want to. But also the most important thing is it now supports it when you're importing. So when you're bringing in your text from Word files or rich text files, it will preserve the bold and italic and underline and the different ways that people kind of emphasize the text. So again, for certain people, that's been a huge disadvantage of the old version of Quirkos, not being able to support that. And that was a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that worked right, and then exports again into the Word outputs and CSV exports, etc., etc. So it's quite an exciting thing. Okay, so now let's look at some of the export options which are new. So we go to the new export button. That has everything in one place now, so it's easy to find. And let's generate a report. So the reports, we've not changed very much, so they'll be quite familiar to you if you've used them before. But what will be different is the new options that we have because of the new features. So memos now included in the reports. So you've got a separate table at the end where you can see all the memos together. And we've also got the new Word export option. To save the report as a editable document. So you can bring it into Word or share with anyone that has Word, and then they can look into that, they can edit bits, and you can change anything. So you can change the style, you can change the format, you can change the layout. Absolutely anything is now possible because you've got the ability to save it in the Word cloud. So let me just show you right at the end. So it says, now I've got the option here, include memo tables. So we scroll zip, 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 right the way to the end. So no memos, I didn't put memos in for most people, but yeah, I've done them for James. So there's the memo. Here's the associated text, who did it and when. Someone else's, oh, I guess we put them all in James's. Yeah, that's where we put them all. So there's the option for the memos table, but you'll see this other button here says save words. This is new, and that means that you can generate a standard Word file, and that will create something which you can edit and change any aspect of. So just give you a quick view of how that looks once Word loads here. So I guess we dirty and save this on the desktop. So the Word export we had before was just limited to the transcript, but now we have the report. So the tables which are in the report, we have the summary here. Thank you, Word. All the tables, all the data, all the information, but now we can change this and edit this in any way. We can change the width of things, we can change the color of things, we can do all kinds of exciting things now. Because it's an editable Word file. So for people who want to get in and out particular quotes and bits of text, that's become a lot easier now, especially if you're putting it into another Word document. But we've tried to keep all the same features. So you've got the attribution here, you've got the color-coded stripes. You can see exactly the color that you chose to export tables and things as well. This is a pretty big report, so it's actually taking quite a long time to generate. So yeah, it's very exciting to have all of this. And again, something which is going to be very useful for a lot of people. Now, there's one other thing which people have been asking for here, which we now have in the reports, and that is the highlight ID. So now each of these quotes has a unique identifier number. And what that means is when you turn this on in the report, you can then refer to a particular quote. And a lot of people have been asking for this. They wanted something like line numbers or paragraph numbers so that they could associate a particular quote to an appendix or something like that in a thesis or a report. Now, line numbers are fickle because if you change the margin size, the lines will change. Paragraph numbers can also be easily modified if you start changing the source, but by having a unique number, so this is quote 2,950, because there's a lot of quotes in this project, you can then say, this is specifically that quote. Someone can look it up in the table afterwards. You know that you're referring to that exact part of the text, and it doesn't move however much you change your incoming sources. So I hope that's going to be a good solution for that people have been asking for. Now, the other new export option we have is the CSVs. Now, we did have this before, but it was a bit of a lazy kind of dump of all of the data. We've now made this a lot more intuitive. Sorry. Let's create this in the right way. So I'm creating a folder to create, to hold all the new CSV files. And then that's going to show me when it loads. Come on, Windows. Great. So now we have the CSV data here. So we've got much more logical tables now. So we've got a separate CSV file for the memos. So let's have a look at that. Oh, it's loading on my other screen. So here's the memos. There's the quote was attached to, what source it came from, who did it and when, yada, yada, yada. All the information is there. And we have a lot more information now about the quirks. So we've got the relationship to them, the color, the title, how many quotes of them, and also now how many quotes from each source. So we can see that. Let's see here. So James, lots of quotes. James expressed a lot of personal opinions. Anyone expressed more than James? No. So out of 179 quotes, 13 were from on personal opinions, 13 were from James. So it's a lot of fun to kind of explore the data in this way. So let's see what else we have. We've got the sources here. So that's another way of showing the actual text, so that the whole text now has been exported to the data. It's probably not very useful for most people because of the word export's probably a better way to get that out, but it has all the data there if you need it. And we've also got the quotes. So this is probably the one most people will use. So here we've got the quotes. That's the actual quote. And see, this is duplicated because this was associated to more than one piece of text. Sorry, to more than one quirk. But we've also got the properties now for each of the quirks as well. So there's a lot more possible to do, kind of drilling down in different ways. Now the neat thing here, of course, is to use the filters here. So if we filter by gender, that's what we can do in Quirkos, we can do in Excel. We can see all the quotes from women or all the people who voted a particular way. Oops. And we can also see this by source. So everyone from a particular person. So you can see how we're kind of drilling down. So just those particular women, we can see things. We can sort it by the quote ID. So now there's lots of different ways that you can kind of explore, rework with that data. And especially if you're going to bring that into SPSS or R, there's a lot more detail now and a lot more kind of connections made between the sources. So you can explore it in whole new ways. So that's, for a brief tour, that's pretty much everything we're going to cover today. Always get in touch if you've got any questions. And as I said, we'll be doing another video very shortly with this in, and there's other videos which are going to be giving you a kind of step-by-step process of the new features, which will be coming out next week. So there's a lot more things to come. But thanks for tuning in today. Thanks for watching this through. Do give the new version a try. You can download it for free and use it for up to 4 weeks. So please let us know how you get on and what you want to see in the next update. Thanks very much.